Greetings, grammar aficionados. If you can tolerate me, I'd like to introduce another topic and do a series of videos on it, and that's verb tense. I took the concept of tenses and I looked at it for many, many years, well over 20 years, and I came up with my own system. I call it amplified verb tense, and I put a date of 2000 on there, but I've been doing this for a long time. In fact, I've been working on this since we homeschooled our children, and that was in the early 90s. So I've been fooling with this for a long time and would like to wrap it up, though it'll never be wrapped up. I'm always working on it. So let's just present what I have to this point. Now, as you know, there's a thing called tense, and there's tense groups. In the contemporary or traditional system that you're used to, all right, you have your simple tense, perfect, progressive, and perfect progressive. I have renamed those, restructured them. I call it amplified verb tense. And I have the basic tense, the transpired extensional, and transpired extensional. Okay? In other words, I just renamed the four original tense groups. Now, if you're familiar with my music theory videos and my accordion videos, you'll know that I take old things, common things, and try to work with them, develop them to see if they can be pushed any farther, see if they can be refined, made better, and sometimes I introduce new terms, new terminology. So that's what I'm doing here with verb tense, okay? Now, you might be familiar with this, you know, the tense groups I mentioned. Simple, I call mine basic, and there's the perfect tense group, and I call it transpired. The progressive, I call mine extensional, and the perfect progressive, I call mine transpired extensional. But in each group, you have three subgroups. You'll have, in other words, you're in your simple tense, you'll have your simple present, your simple past, and your simple future. So you see you have four basic tense groups, but in total, you'll have 12 tenses, because each one has three different features, and I call them action time designators. In other words, when you mention this tense group, you're giving a general indication of when the action is happening, but when you use your action time indicators, you see you're giving a more specific time. Okay, so you have your four tense groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, but in total you'll have 12 tenses. Now you can study this on your own in your grammar books to get an idea of the basic setup, the traditional setup. Now, in this series of videos, and I'll try not to take forever, but that's difficult for me, I have goals, okay? I have many goals. And one of which is I'd like to explain the verb base form, the base form, the simplest form. I'd like to talk about the simple tense, the traditional simple tense, and what it really means, especially the simple present tense. I'd like to show how you get your tense from your verb form and the context of the sentence. I'd like to define the words have and been. The word have and the word been. They're mentioned in all grammar books and all over the place and all over the internet, but nobody actually defines them. No, I can't find one person who actually defined them, the words, in the context that we use them, in the application that we use them with tenses. That's hard to say. I'd like to show how we create the perfect progressive tense, talk about the innate tense illusion, how things allude to or suggest tense. And then I'd like to talk about my new tense names and some of the new terms that I've thrown in. Okay, so in this intro, let's look at tense just for a minute. Tense, generally speaking, indicates the time of a verb's action or the verb's occurrence or the state of being. All right? It indicates the time of action in relation to the time of the speaking or writing about that action. In other words, it's a time of action indicator. It's an indicator of the time of the action. All right? Now, when I say I'm giving you a new thing called amplified verb tense, okay? When I say amplified, it's kind of like what I said with my amplified circle of fifths that they kind of invented in my other videos. When I say amplified, okay, I mean expanded by the use of detail or illustration or by close analysis. So basically, we're just trying to take the regular tense stuff and push it and refine it and go as far as you can go with it. See, with my music ideas, I pushed them, and I actually, and I don't mean to sound arrogant or pompous, but I think in Western music theory, I think I have the final word, because with scales, clefs, chords, and some other things that I mentioned, you can't push them any farther. You can't go any farther, or they'll just explode and blow up. So I'm trying to do this with verb tense, and I don't know if I've succeeded. You can be the judge. And so what I'll do is explicate. I will give a detailed explanation, or I will analyze this logically, okay? Now, it's kind of simple. On the surface, it's kind of simple. You have a verb, right? You have your verb. Now, everybody knows verbs, but to create a tense or a sense of tense, a sense of time of the action, the occurrence, or the state of being, all right? You have more than just the verb as a factor. You have your verb, right? You have your helping or auxiliary verbs, right? And you also have the context. You have the verb used in a certain context within the sentence. So a verb, as we mentioned, expresses action, occurrences, or states of being. Okay? Now, there's, with your regular verbs, all your verbs except for the verb be, be, right? They'll have 5 forms, your verb forms. You have your base form, your past form, your past participle, present participle, and S form, okay? Those are the 5 verb forms for all verbs except the verb be, all right? Now, then you have your helping or auxiliary, I call them auxiliary words. Some people call them helping verbs, but I just call them helping words because they're not really verbs. We have will, then we have forms of the verb have, okay? We have, has, had. I can't see this, it's backwards for me. And then there's some forms of the verb be, all right, which we use in tense. And that would be am, I am, is, are, was, were, be, and been. And then finally, to impart tense to someone, in addition to the verb form, and in addition to the helping verb, you have the context of the sentence. You have the context. All right? The context, just roughly speaking, is the setting in which something occurs. Now, to get your tense, to get a solid feel for the time of action that they're trying to impart, you consider the verb, you consider the helping verbs if there are any, and then you consider the context in which all this stuff is being spoken. Okay? I'm trying to keep it simple here. We'll go into more detail later. So, as I mentioned, you have your 5 verb forms for normal verbs, right? Base, past, past participle, present participle, S form. And down here now, if you just take, as an example, you just take the simple tense, all right? You'll have your action time indicators, present, past, future. And so you see here, if you look at this, that for your simple present tense, okay, that's one of the total 12. For your simple present tense, you'll see the verb form. You see your verb form is your verb base form. See, I work, and work is your base form, your verb base form. So you see that in your simple present tense, the verb base form is employed. It's thrown in there. And we have to talk about that because that's very important. That's the launching point that I used to jump off and go off into this crazy study. All right? And you ask yourself, like I did, this base form or this simple present tense, you say, well, is it really a tense? And it is, but it isn't. And from here we'll go off and we'll talk about it. And if you get bored, just press stop. If not, hang around and maybe we'll both learn something. So thank you for being patient and hope to see you soon.